Hello everyone and welcome back to Astrophysicist Plays. My first video on Portal got a lot of enthusiasm, so I thought I'd go back and try some more Portal. Now you might be looking at this and thinking, those graphics don't look quite right for Portal to me. Well, this probably isn't a Portal game you've heard of, but it might be. This is a fan game called Portal 64, which I found from a creator on YouTube called James Lambert. So I thought I would give this a try, as it allows us to get into some interesting discussions about Portal that the base game doesn't, because he implements a few additional physics tricks. So, without further ado, let's get to the game.
Hello, and, again, welcome to the Aperture Science Computer-Aided Enrichment Center. We hope your brief detention in the relaxation vault has been a pleasant one. Your specimen has been processed, and we are now ready to begin the test proper. Before we start, however, keep in mind that although fun and learning are the primary goals of all enrichment center activities, serious injuries may occur. For your own safety and the safety of others, please refrain from... Por favor, por donde fallan. Muchas gracias.
Okay, I will refrain from speaking Spanish.
The portal will open in 3, 2, 1.
Okay. You'll have to forgive the somewhat awkward controls. In order to simulate twin stick controls, this game uses the C buttons of the N64 controller. So, yes, the N64 controller, this game is actually a demake of Portal, albeit with some new puzzles apparently. And it is set up as a ROM, which can work on any N64 emulator, or if you have a flash cart, theoretically even an actual N64 console. So yeah, the C buttons aren't the best, and controller support on the emulator I'm using is a bit wonky, which resulted in my two sticks being swapped, so you'll have to bear with me as my instincts are a bit off and control will be a bit slow. Okay, so far here, all the same as the original Portal. Okay, there we go.
Excellent. Please proceed
Not
into the
very
chamber lock
excellent.
after completing each test. First, however, note the incandescent particle field across the exit. This Aperture Science Material Emancipation Grill will vaporize any unauthorized equipment that passes through it. For instance, the Aperture Science Weighted Storage Cube.
This is quite nice for a demake. The emulator I'm using does do some anti-aliasing, which certainly helps things, but even so, it's quite impressive. Okay.
Please place the weighted storage cube on the 1500 megawatt Aperture Science Heavy Duty Super Colliding Super Button.
Okay, super button time. Well, you couldn't go for button 64? Oh, well, okay. How do we do this? Alright. So... there we go. Okay, we've got the portal turning around here, and my instincts are still all scrambled. Hold on, let me pause, see if I can fix this. Okay, controls should be fixed now. Yeah, that feels right. Okay. Okay, we still have the issue that we only have digital controls for motion, but yeah, that's just a limit of the fact that this is a demake. Okay, so Let's see. It looks like, yeah, we can't actually see the portals being created, but oh, okay. Yeah, the portals are working quite well here. Oh, and we can even see Chell. Or should it be Shell? It's short for Michelle, I think. Yes, I'm gonna go with Shell, even though it's spelled with a C. There we go. Okay, now wait for the portal to swap again. Oh, there we go. Oh, so a little bit of flipping into that.
Please move quickly to the chamber lock, as the effects of prolonged exposure to the button are not part of this test.
Button, please don't expose yourself to me any more than necessary. Ugh. Ah, dismissed it. Okay, we're waiting a second. So yeah, it's quite impressive to be able to do this in a demake, getting all the camera physics correct for the portals on the N64 hardware must have been quite a trick. So far this does seem to be the same as the base game, but let's see if we encounter anything new and interesting, as from the YouTube videos I saw, some new things definitely are planned. Okay.
You're doing very well.
Thank you.
Please be advised that a noticeable taste of blood is not part of any test protocol, but is an unintended side effect of the Aperture Science Material Emancipation Grill, which may, in semi-rare cases, emancipate dental fillings, crowns, tooth enamel, and teeth.
Yeah, I think this audio is ripped straight from the base game. So far, this just seems to be a straight demake. Okay. Ah. Hello, Portagun. Please don't shoot one into me. That could be awkward. Okay, now here's a question for you. Let's say it did shoot a portal into me. If you're up on the Portal 2 lore, you know, that'll probably require me coating me with moon rocks. Then let's say I turned sideways and slipped through the other portal. What do you think would happen then? Well, from a physics perspective, I'm sorry to say, but there really isn't a good answer for that.
Portal device. With it, you can create your own portals. These intradimensional gates have proven to be completely safe. The device, however, has not. Do not touch the operational end of the device. Do not look directly at the operational end of the device. Do not submerge
so we've got both
the
portals
device
straight
in liquid,
away, actually.
even partially. Most importantly, under no circumstances should you...
She was probably going to say under no circumstances should you put one portal through another, as I could easily imagine that causing havoc. So I'm just trying to think through from a physics perspective what actually would happen if you put one portal through another. So if we think of these portals as like a wormhole in space, then we can kind of imagine that space-time works by connecting a tunnel from where one is to where the other is. So if we so let's just imagine we had a tube, like a flexible straw that represents the two ends of the tunnel. If we take one end and put it through the other, then it exits inside the tube. However, with portals, the tube is effectively of zero length, since when we walk through a portal, we're instantly on the other side. There's no time we spend going through it. So it's a tube that basically adjusts space-time so that we go through it instantly. So it's like, although it covers a length of space, it itself has zero length. So going back to putting one end inside the other, that would probably, yeah, it would put it inside that zero length tube, and there's nowhere to go from there. It would just uh, go back out itself. Ooh, yeah, it's fun to think about, but would be hell to simulate. Now, if the portals actually had some length inside them, if they weren't infinite, then it would be a bit more sensible when we put one inside the other. When we go into it, we could essentially imagine just going into the portal tube and being trapped there forever. When there's no space to it, I don't know, the most sensible thing to me would be that the entire portal system collapses into nothingness. But yeah, we're really stretching the laws of physics to the breaking point here, so I'm not sure that's even a sensible question to ask. Anyways, let's get out of here. Things are already starting to differ a bit from the base game in that we're getting both portals straight away. So let's see what happens from here. Come on, loading zone, loading. Yeah, there are a few graphical glitches here and there, but for what this game is trying to achieve. Yeah.
Mind the gap.
Yeah, for what this game is trying to achieve, it's still quite impressive. Okay. Let's see. So, yeah. Standard portal puzzles. Put one over here, put one over here. Go through. No, that's too boring. There we go. That's more fun. And yeah, we get back to our old tricks here of mixing up the heights of portals in order to violate, in theory at least, conservation of energy and conservation of momentum at the same time. So, energy, because we go from a low potential to a high potential without changing our kinetic energy. And momentum, because we go from having a velocity downwards to having a velocity forwards without changing that momentum to give it to anything else. So yeah, I occasionally see a bit of a graphical glitch with a portal in this game, but most of the time it works pretty well. Let's see, if we set them up close to a wall. No. Yeah, I wonder if this game has any limitations. Can we do infinite portal depth here? On this engine, at least. I know in the base portal there doesn't seem to be a limit, but here, yeah, they're understandable on the hardware. There's going to be a limit to the portal depth. We can only really go the depth of 2 portals deep, and then once we go through one, so yeah, the other one opens. Okay, fair enough.
Well done. Remember, the Aperture Science Bring Your Daughter to Work Day is the perfect time to have her tested.
Yep, I'm sure that's not plot relevant at all. Okay, if this is just like the base game, I could probably zoom through it pretty quickly, but we'll see if or if not there's anything new here. Yeah, alright, simple block on a... Okay, so the block's not quite going through. There we go. Yeah, physics isn't quite as smooth as in the original, but it gets the job done.
Once again, excellent work. As part of our required test protocol, we will not monitor the next test chamber. You will be entirely on your own.
Yeah, that's
Good
a
luck.
complete lie. Yeah, GLaDOS, I know you're lying, and... Not that it's really so surprising. I mean, why would I trust you not to lie in the first place? Have you ever done anything particularly trustworthy for me? I mean, trust is hard to prove. I mean, one lie disproves trustworthiness, but you could tell the truth 99 times in a row and lie the 100th time. And, what? Yeah, so, okay, GLaDOS is a bit unfair. It's not really a fair expectation for you to prove trustworthiness for me, because that's just not really possible. However, you can... So I should give you the benefit of the doubt that you're not lying, and if you do turn out to be lying, I'm gonna have to, I don't know, maybe I'll just tear you to pieces, throw every piece into a fire, yada yada. Okay, yeah, we've got another block there. Yeah, back there, but we can pick it up. Okay, not the best idea to put it on the ground, we just get bouncing. Okay, so, what's that? There we go. Okay.
As part of a required test protocol, our previous statement suggesting that we would not monitor this chamber was an outright fabrication. Good job.
Well, if it was just a
As part of
fabrication and not a lie,
required
I
test
guess I can forgive
We will
you.
stop enhancing the truth in 3, 2...
Okay, so. This. So, how do we get out of this room? I think I broke the game. Developer bug report. If you kind of walk through the edge of a portal, reality splits in two. I swear I did not put one portal inside another portal, but yeah. Okay, let me just see if this emulator has a rewind feature. Nope, no rewind feature, which means, okay, can we jiggle our way out? No. Okay, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to reset and get back to where I left off. Be right back, this time with save states to make sure, or that if this does happen again, we won't lose as much progress. Okay, I'm back to about where we broke reality last time.
As part of a required test protocol, our previous statement suggesting that we would not monitor this chamber was an outright fabrication. Good job.
Okay,
As part of a required test protocol, we will stop
Yes, we know GLaDOS. Okay, I'm just going to talk over you for a second. So I think why we got stuck last time is in the base game, we only had one portal color at this point, so there was no way to shoot the orange portal and get stuck, but probably just due to the development state of the game, it's set up so that, yeah, we can shoot the orange one, but this room now counts as out of bounds, so if we go back there, we break reality. So let's load our previous save state, and this time shoot the blue one instead.
Protocol. Our previous statement
okay, good.
That we
no reality breaking.
This chamber was an outright fabrication. Good job. As part of a required test protocol, we will stop enhancing the truth in 3, 2...
Alright, so looks like we've actually reached the end of the publicly available demake version. Oh, okay, found another way to break reality. So let's go back here. Let's see if we can do this in this room. Now this is fun. We're actually rotating slightly. I think in the original game, The portals auto-align if you put them on a horizontal surface, so that they always face a specific direction. But that doesn't seem to be the case in this demake, so we actually get this steady rotation as we fall here. So it's a bit interesting. So that's actually another thing to add. So if you watch my previous episode on Portal, I talked a bit about how and why portals can violate conservation of momentum, possibly conservation of energy. But here we see a case where we're changing our angular position by going through these portals. And let's see. So, does this cause us to violate any other conservation laws? So, okay, we'll put them almost directly perpendicular. Okay, not quite like that. Okay, yeah. There we go, that works. Yeah, so here we've got a conservation of energy violation going on. We keep falling, speeding up. Yeah, until we hit basically our terminal velocity. But we're also rotating every time we go through. At face value, we don't seem to be violating any additional laws by rotating each time, but it's actually possible that we could violate conservation momentum. For instance, if we shot something down at an angle, it would come out at a different angle. And remember, momentum is directional. So if you change the direction, you change the momentum, and we violate conservation of momentum. Now, of course, with conservation of momentum, it's a lot easier to do this just by putting portals on two perpendicular walls. So if we define this as north and go dashing through it, we come out going west. So no conservation of momentum there. And theoretically, with portals rotated relative to each other, we could also violate it that way. One other thing we violate is conservation of angular momentum for similar reasons. Pretty much whenever you can violate the directionality of linear momentum, you violate angular momentum, which just like angular momentum basically says that if you choose any point in space and as your point of rotation, and then so let's say theoretically the point of rotation, let me just choose an example. Well, let's use this block as our point. Okay, so let's place this block here. If we go this way, clockwise, looking down around the block, we'll say that positive angular momentum, counterclockwise is negative. If we go towards or away from it, that's 0. So here, if we go directly away from this block towards this portal, that's 0 angular momentum. But as soon as we go through it, now we're going counterclockwise around the block, and so we've got negative angular momentum. So at the same time a change in direction of linear momentum is violated, we also violate angular momentum. So back to the discussion in the previous video, why is this being caused? So linear momentum is violated or allowed to be violated when translational symmetry is broken. That is, when there's a point in space where you can move slightly and the laws of physics suddenly are violated, or the laws of physics change gradually when you move in space. Basically, if any motion in space could cause the laws of physics to be violated, like right here, when we go through a portal, the laws of physics are violated as we don't appear on the other side of the wall, we appear in a different point in the room. that violates conservation of, that can allow a violation of conservation of linear momentum. This comes from Noether's theorem, which basically says that any smooth symmetry of space, that is, any transformation you can do to space where the laws of physics stay the same, results in a conservation law. And translational symmetry gives us conservation of momentum. So when we break translational symmetry, we can allow conservation momentum to be broken. It's not necessarily going to be broken. For instance, if we have portals on either side of these walls, we don't actually break conservation of momentum as things go through at the same speed and direction as they come out the other side. But when they're facing different directions, we do get that violation. Okay. Now, what about conservation of angular momentum? Now, this arises through Noether's theorem from symmetry of angle. That is, looking in any direction gives you the same physics. And here it's, a bit subtler why it's violated. And in fact, you have to imagine we're exactly at the point of the portal for that. Oh, Shell, you've been split in half here. Hope you're all right. Okay, now you're just an arm. Never mind that. Oh, there's the rest of you, no worries. Okay. Yeah, so you have to imagine we're actually at the point of this portal. That's the point where the laws of physics go wonky. And looking in basically one set of directions, we see the laws of physics. Basically, we go into one point in space, and looking in another direction, we go into a different point in space. So the angle we look at determines where we end up in a way that isn't a smooth transition. There's a very discrete jump. And this results basically, and also not just the point we end up, but the velocity we end up having when we go out. So the relationship between angle and velocity doesn't have a smooth symmetry as we cross this, as there's a very discrete jump in the velocity we get relative to the angle from it. So we break angular symmetry here, which allows breaking conservation of angular momentum. Okay. So finally, one other thing I wanted to discuss in this game was actually the reason I chose this game rather than the original, but unfortunately it looks like it isn't in the publicly available version yet. So I'll leave a link in the description to a video that James Lambert, the creator of this demake, made, where he said he solved the portal paradox. So many of you watching might be wondering right now, what is the portal paradox? It's basically a question of what happens when one of the portals is moving. Now, those of you who have played through both of the original games might think back and recall that there's really no time you can go through a portal where one of the portals is moving. There's one point in Portal 2 where you can shoot a laser through a portal where one end is moving, but this is programmed as a special set piece and isn't fully interactable. So we're going to have to imagine what happens here, as we can't simulate it in this game yet. So let's say we put one portal on the wall over there and have it stationary. And we'll just imagine the blue portal comes out the front of this box while I move it around. So let's say we take, while I'm moving this box forward with the blue portal we imagine on the front of it, let's say we take the other box in this room, put it through the orange portal, so it'll come out the blue portal on the front of this box. And let's push it through very slowly as we possibly can, while at the same time we're running forward with this one. So the blue portal, let's say it's going forward at 10 meters per second. We push the other box through the orange portal at 1 meter per second. So that box should come out of the moving portal, but how fast does it travel when it comes out the moving portal? So it goes in at 1 meters per second. Does it come out at 1 meter per second? Well, we're already traveling at 10 meters per second. So if it comes out any slower than we're moving, it's going to be pushed right back through. Okay, what if we push it through much faster? Let's say we're moving 10 meters, we shoot it through at 100. Does it come out at 100? That wouldn't seem to cause a problem. And that's in fact what a lot of people intuitively think should happen. The game explicitly tells you momentum is conserved going through portals. That is, speedy thing goes in, speedy thing comes out. But I already showed you here, momentum isn't conserved going through portals. Direction of momentum in particular is not conserved. Speed is conserved, that's true, but direction isn't. And direction is a fundamental part of momentum. You can't really just separate out the speed component. And in fact, I could put a portal right aside, and essentially the speed flips from positive to negative when we go through a portal setup like this. So even if the direction is always forward and back, you could say the speed flips from positive to negative. So contrary to what the game says, momentum already isn't conserved. So in any way we try to resolve the supposed portal paradox of coming out of a moving portal, we can't rely on conservation of momentum to guide us, because we've already established once we have portals we don't have conservation of momentum in the first place. So basically there are two ways we can imagine something being resolved. One way is that if you take a point in fixed space, like everything, all momentum is, well, you can't even say momentum will be conserved, but all speed has to be conserved relative to that. So that is, if we put a portal there, we move this box at 10 meters per second, then we shoot something through the portal at 100 meters, it comes out at 100 meters, though maybe has changed direction. So that means whether we're moving the portal forward or backwards or at whatever speed, it comes through at 100 meters per second. It comes out, that is, at 100 meters per second, the same as when it went in. But this does lead to weird things, like what if we're moving forwards at exactly 100 meters per second? Then we'll be catching up just as it goes through. Or what if we're going even faster than that? Does it fall out behind us? What if it's a thick wall that doesn't have a behind? One proposed solution is that the box would just stop when it hits the entrance portal in this case, if it can't get out fast enough. And yeah, that would seem to solve this. Although we might have to think through some of the implications there. So let's put a pin in that, come back later. The next possibility is that when it enters the portal, the relative velocity on entrance ends up being the same as the relative velocity on exit, just relative to the positioning of the other portal. So here, let's just say we have the portals like this. If we go in at 10 meters per second into the blue, we'll end up with 10 meters per second out of the orange. So the momentum gets rotated the same way the portals are rotated relative to each other. So in this case, if we have, and then the same happens with motion. That is, if one portal is moving relative to the other, it gets that additional motion relative to it coming out. So let's say again, blue is fixed on the wall, orange is on this box. We move forward at 10 meters per second, shoot something through at 100 meters. It comes out at the orange now at 110 meters per second. Okay. Or let's say we push something slowly through at 1 meter per second. Then it would come out from the one moving 10 meters per second at 11 meters per second. Okay, so this time it actually does come out. It comes out 1 meter per second ahead of how we're moving and doesn't need to hit a wall. So we don't end up getting any walls this way. So this relative motion at first glance seems potentially a bit more sensible, as there isn't really any setup for it that would cause something to not be able to go through a portal. And a universe in which we can always go through portals is objectively better than a universe in which we sometimes can't go through portals. Okay, so we'll call that the relative option, and the first the absolute option. So always going through portals, 1 point for the relative option. Now, the absolute option, are there any arguments in favor of it? Well, we don't get conservation of momentum either way, but what about conservation of energy? Portals, at least static portals on their own, don't necessarily violate conservation of energy. I talked about it in the previous episode. If you have one up higher than the other, Noether's theorem doesn't give us a reason conservation of energy should be violated. Interesting graphical glitch here. There seems to be like a dead spot where we can't create another portal. That's actually... Okay, so another bug report. I'm not sure why this is, but I'm just going to do a save state, see what happens if I enter it. Can't enter it. Okay, so it's just a graphical oddity and dead spot on the wall where I can't shoot another portal. Okay. Yeah, so anyways, now it looks in the game like conservation of energy is violated, but from Noether's theorem, conservation of energy is a result of time symmetry. That is, the laws of physics are the same over time. And having two portals in static positions doesn't result in anything changing with time. So we shouldn't actually lose conservation of energy. And as I discussed in the previous video, the likely reason for that is that the game should be simulating it would take energy to go through the portal, as we need to go up in the potential. And if we don't have that, we're not actually violating time symmetry, but we're violating the principle of least action, which is another of the two components that goes into Noether's theorem. So since the game violates the principle of least action, that allows us to break conservation of energy. But let's imagine a world in which the principle of least action weren't violated, and we did have to expend energy to go to a higher portal. And think from there. So what about moving portals? So what if we have... So yeah, there's our one fixed, and we'll imagine the blue is on the other end here. So now we have one portal moving to the other. So in this case, with the portal moving, maybe we do violate time symmetry, as... So imagine going through the orange at second 0, you'll come out over here. Second 1, you come out over here. Second 2, you come out over here. So the position you exit, the change in position, depends on the time you go through the portal. So arguably, in this case, we don't have time symmetry, as the motion, transposition we get when going through the portal depends on the time. So when we have moving portals, now we are violating time symmetry, and Noether's theorem allows us to violate conservation of energy. So this means, for instance, let's put something through that has a mass of 1 kilogram at a velocity of 1 meter per second. Kinetic energy then is going to be half a joule. That's 1/2 mass times velocity squared. And joules are the units we get when we multiply kilograms times meters squared over seconds squared. So, okay, we go through at 1 meter per second. We get, we have a energy of 1 joule. We go through, okay, another graphical glitch there. Our dead spot or whatever that is. So the reality of the game is breaking down around us, so we've got a bit of a timer here. But anyway, we go through with 1 joule. If the box is moving at 10 meters per second, so by the absolute option, we wouldn't be able to go through it all. We'd maybe bounce off, but we'd still maintain that energy, would have to go somewhere. By the relative option, we'd come out at a velocity of 11 meters per second, which gives us an kinetic energy of 60.5 joules. So we've gained a lot of energy by going through a static portal and coming out a moving portal. So we've violated conservation of energy, but Noether's theorem says, well, maybe that's okay. Now, going back to the absolute, let's say we're going 100 meters per second. Okay, we go in 100, we come out 100. Okay. So energy is the same, it is conserved. Noether's theorem doesn't say that it has to be broken when we break time symmetry. Just like in the case where we have one portal on the wall like that and one like that. Translational symmetry is definitely broken here, but if we walk through one, we come out with the same momentum. So momentum actually is conserved, even though translational symmetry isn't. Noether's theorem only goes one way. So it doesn't say we have to break conservation of momentum if we lose translational symmetry. Just like if we lose time symmetry, we don't have to lose conservation of energy. So there's no point against the absolute interpretation of the portal paradox for not violating conservation of energy. That's fine. And then going to the relative case, we go in at 10, we come out at 110. And so we get, I think it's like 605 joules coming out, even though we had 50 going in. We violate conservation of energy, but Noether's theorem allows us. So, in the end, the absolute allows us to maintain conservation of energy, although, the game already kind of violates that since it doesn't follow the principle of least action, so I'm not sure how much of a benefit that really is. But it also has that weird wall effect if things aren't traveling fast enough. So I wouldn't say there's any point on either side here. So we're still at 1 point for relative, 0 points for absolute. And I'm just going to load a previous save state so as I'm concerned about reality collapsing on us. Okay, now it's only slightly collapsed. Okay. So let's think about some other aspects of this. One important thing you can do in the real world is that the laws of physics stay the same whatever velocity you're traveling at. So this means that if you're traveling at a velocity of 1 meter per second, the laws of physics, everything you perceive will be the same as if you weren't traveling at all. Now, things will start moving relative to you, but all the laws will be constant. This is not true if you start spinning. If you're spinning, you'll see a fictitious force called centrifugal force show up. And this is just another application of the symmetry. It's symmetry of velocity, or if you want to get technical, we call it Lorentz boosts to take into account special relativity. But what this means is that any interpretation of the portal paradox should also follow symmetry of motion. So let's imagine a case we have one portal stationary and then other portal on this box moving towards it. We could also change our frame of reference so that the box is stationary and the other portal is moving towards the box. And any interpretation of the portal paradox should give sensible results when we do that. So let's start with the relative case this time. The relative case, by definition, everything is relative. So when you change everything, you're just subtracting the same constant value from both sides. And it ends up working very simply. So like if in the base case, you enter at 1 meter per second into the blue to something that's and the exit portal is going at 10, you come out at 11. Now, if you shift it, you subtract off 10 from each. So we go into the blue at a velocity of -9, while the blue is coming to us at -10. Then we exit a portal that's going 0 at a velocity of 1. Okay, we get into a bit of negative numbers there, but it still can behave sensibly. So what about the absolute case? So blue's coming towards us at -9. We're going at -10. So we should be coming out with a velocity of -10. But in this case, the block is stationary. We can't get through the block. We should hit a wall. Okay, don't see much of a problem there. So we have to, in order to not be going out, our velocity has to be 0 or greater here. So let's say the blue is coming at us. Blue's coming at us at -10. We're going forward at 1. It would come out of the other one at a velocity of 1. Okay. Doesn't seem to be much problem. That one's stationary, so it's fine to pop out at 1. No change in conservation of energy, no change in conservation of momentum. So shifting between the two, it doesn't seem to cause any extra problems with energy or momentum. We still fail to go through under the same circumstances. So not any more points against the absolute system. Now, we can try other translations like changing angles, think about what happens there, but yeah, we're just going to end up getting the same results, that both of them work just as well. We've still just got the one problem of a wall when things aren't going fast enough in the absolute system. What I think is actually going to be the key to solving this is we're thinking of things going through the portals as if they're discrete points. But imagine we have a long rod going through the portal. Like, let's say we'll put the orange portal at the end of this block, and we'll take a long rod, 10 meters long, stick it through the blue portal. So we'll have 5 meters sticking out this end, 5 meters sticking out of that box. So if we leave it there and pick up this box and start moving it around, what would you expect to happen with the rod? So under the relative system, the rod should stay at a velocity of 0 relative to each end, which means if we move it forward, the rod on this end should start moving forward. We move it back, it comes back. So the rod, so essentially we just have it like a cube with a 5-meter rod sticking out of it here. It behaves pretty sensibly. Now what about the absolute system? So the rod is stationary there, and it should have to stay stationary here. So if we try to pick this up, we we would have to start moving the rod. And if the rod stays fixed, it would hit the edge of the portal and maybe stop us from moving it up, or we would have to apply force to move it up. But yeah, let's think about this. If we start moving it up before it hits the edge of the portal, then suddenly the rod is at the bottom of this portal. Should it then be at the bottom of that portal? But then it would have to move down, but it's not moving down in this perspective. Okay, so that doesn't seem to make much sense. Let's just think about moving it forward and back. So the rod is stationary here and stationary there. If we try to move it forward here, then it should still be stationary in both frames of reference, but that means we're essentially going to eat up the rod, and where is the rest of that rod going to go? Okay, so maybe the rod acts as some sort of wall itself, that if it's sticking out, we can't eat it up. Okay, what if we pulled back? So it would have to be stationary there, but then it comes out of this side. Well, where are we getting more rod from? Do we have to break the rod in half in order to pull back? Maybe. Okay, so the absolute system is giving us more problems when we think about it this way, whereas the relative system seemed to handle things quite easily. So again, if we try to push forward, we get a wall. If we try to pull back, we would have to break the rod in order to do so. So once you start thinking of things as extended bodies with connections between them and doing this, the absolute system gives us more problems. It's not to say that it wouldn't work, as if you think about it, in reality, most things are, well, pretty much all things are made up of, I say pretty much, why do I keep qualifying myself? Probably just a scientist's habit of avoiding absolutes, but as far as we know, everything is made up of individual particles, and those particles are teeny tiny, but they do have connections to each other through various forces that transmit it across space. And those particles could individually go across, and then maybe the forces between them would determine how things interact when they cross portals. Like, presumably the forces will cross portals. We aren't splitting atoms into two. We could get a very chaotic nuclear reaction if the nuclear forces don't go across portals at the second an atom crosses through it. So from a collection of particles, you can imagine each of them one by one going through the portal, appearing on the other side, and maintaining connections with each other. And when we try to push in, those connections will resist us. Or will they? Because the connections are connecting through the portals. They're not connecting to what the portal is on. And so, like, imagine again, we're in the absolute system, we're pushing against a rod that's through it. So within the rod, if you try to push the rod together, just forget about portals, you have a rod, you try to collapse it. You can think about it, you have two particles in the center that are resisting, they don't want to occupy the same place, so they push against each other. Then and then now imagine we just have that happening across the portal. But when we're pushing the portal forward, none of those forces are directly interfacing with the portal itself. Now, obviously, something has to hold the rod to keep it from falling down in this room, but we can imagine this all happening in space and zero gravity, so we don't have to worry about that aspect, and the rod is just floating there. And then what is it that stops us from moving the portal? Well, none of the forces are acting on the portal itself, so why would the portal's motion be resisted? And that Then we have to think about, okay, let's go back to portals being like tunnels through space. So imagine we have a flexible straw. We have one entrance here and another entrance, the exit from it connected to this. And if we imagine there's some amount of space to it, maybe a space is stretched out a lot, but there's some amount to it, then we can move this, and maybe as we move it, we're adjusting how space transmit between the two of them, and that space is slowly warping over time. So it's easier if we have one behind the other. So let's say we put the blue portal on this wall, and then our exit imaginary orange portal on the side of this block, and we run away from that. So now the space between the two gets stretched out as we move this away. So let's just think, let's say we were setting up a coordinate system within this space. If the portals have, some amount of length to them instead of being instantaneous. So the blue portal, when we enter, is 0, and we come out at 1. So we have to go from 0 to 1 as we're walking through the portal. And then in real space, originally, let's say we start 1 away, and it's just a normal tunnel through space. And then we stretch it out. So in real space, let's say it goes from 0 to 10, and in the portal from 0 to 1 at a given time. So when we're at 0.5 within the portal, we're at 5 in real space. Just imagine that would be the equivalent. And then as we get to 1, we get to 1 in the portal, we get to 10 in real space. So once we start to think this way, let's imagine that we're just before the end of the portal. We're at 0.99999, and we let the exit portal move. As we look out the side of it, everything, let's say we have a big ruler on the wall here, and then we can measure our distance. So we start out, peek our head through the exit portal, and it's at 0.1. And then it moves forward, we see it at 2, then we hit 3, etc. So the space within the portal feels static to us, but on the exit from it, we seem to be moving. So if we slowly push something out from the exit, that thing we slowly pushed out, it feels like intuitively it should be moving along with us. So if we push something out at a velocity barely above 0, let's just say 0.1 meters per second, and the exit is moving at 10 meters per second, that thing we push out, it feels like it should be moving along the exit. And if it were to instead suddenly hit a wall just because we didn't move it faster than the exit, it would feel very weird to us that we couldn't push it through. So from that perspective, it feels like the relative solution makes the most sense if you're imagining being inside a portal tunnel. So, so far it feels like the relative solution makes the most sense from a lot of perspectives. Maybe we can find a way to salvage the absolute solution. Like, what if in order to be stretching out and push something through, you have to expend energy to get it going? Like, what if over the course of going through the tunnel, in order to get up to the other side, you feel a force against you, and this, while you're within the tunnel, slows you down? So that probably sounded a bit confusing. So let's imagine that it's like a gravitational force within the portal that you run through, and if you're not going fast enough, you feel a bit of gravity and you pull back. So now it's not so much like a wall that stops us, but just like a gravitational field. Like, it switches to us trying to go up. We throw something up. If it's going fast enough, it can escape the gravitational well, fly on forever. If it's not, it'll fall back down. So instead of hitting a wall, maybe we just get pulled back. So if you imagine sticking a metal bar through again, then as we stick it through, we'll feel force back, but assuming the other side is moving again. But if we push hard enough, we can apply enough force to get it all through the other side of the portal. Okay, so that doesn't feel as absurd as a wall. It's more gradual with our more gradual portal. So what if we already have it in and start moving? So from this perspective, we have to think about kind of what we're doing as, I think it's best to think of this as a potential, that the exit portal that we're moving, in order to start it moving, we have to lift the potential of everything attached to that side. So we would have to apply energy to it in order to get things moving. So we would have to apply force to pull out the rod. Though in this case, I'm still not sure we could get this to work, as when from the absolute perspective, the rod shouldn't be moving at all. But if we try to move this, we would have to break the rod. So what happens? Does it somehow push the rod back if we start moving? Maybe if we start moving, the rod on both ends goes back, but you still would have to match the velocity, so it'd have to go out almost instantaneously. If we raise the potential on both ends, it would start causing a force pushing the rod back. So maybe as we slowly speed up, it will slowly increase the force, causing the rod to go back. But even then, just the moment we move a little, we start basically breaking the rod in two, because it would, or crushing the rod in on itself if we go forward, or breaking it if we go in back, as we'd either have to find more rod to come out one side than is going in the other, or push the rod in one side more than is coming out the other. And so it feels like in either of these, the instant we start moving, we're going to hit a problem. So I'm trying really hard to think of a way we can salvage this. We could disallow portals from moving relative to each other at all. That kind of feels like sidestepping the issue. It's like, what happens when X? Well, don't do X. That doesn't really solve the issue. Okay, so what else? So maybe, we would have to find some other way to transmit force between the object going through a portal and the portal itself. And if the portal is just the way space connects to other space, there isn't really any mechanism to transmit force to that. There's no there. Like, the rod is a bunch of particles, but the portal... it's particles, not porticles. But the portal is just space. Or maybe that's what particles are. They're the little bits of space within a portal. And you can't transmit force to space itself. Now, okay, if you know general relativity, yes, there's complications. There are ways you can maybe say that force is transmitted through space, but you can't, general relativity you could. Like, black holes are rotating. Do you drag space? Maybe that's actually what's going on, is we do have something like that. Okay, so maybe with some complicated general relativity solution, we could figure out a way. Although then we hit the issue that we're operating with much, much lower masses here than in GR. Like, we could have a very light rod, and we're saying that that minuscule rod is transmitting force to space itself in the same way that ridiculously massive black hole does, and that doesn't feel right. Now, if we really wanted to, there's probably a way we could figure this out with real-world wormholes and quantum gravity, and spoiler alert, people already have, and the solution is you can't do that. As soon as you have one end of a wormhole moving relative to the other, the whole thing collapses. So real-world physics doesn't actually give us any insight from that perspective. Okay. Let's just sum up where we are. For the portal paradox, we have two possibilities. One, things stay absolute, the speed on one side, speed on the other. Two, things stay relative. Speed relative to the entrance is speed relative to the exit, along with position. One other benefit to things being relative is that angle is already relative. If we go in perpendicular on one side, we come out perpendicular on the other. We go in angular on one side, we come out angular on the other. So angle is already relative. Why not velocity? It's just another way to transform your progress through space. So I'll give that another argument to the relative. One knock against the absolute is that if one end is stationary, the other is moving, and you try to go through the stationary not fast enough, you'll feel it like a wall, and that feels weird. And then it gets even weirder if you try to start moving a portal while something is in the middle of it. Whereas the relative solution doesn't seem to cause any weird effects. I mean, yeah, we do lose conservation momentum, but we'd already lost that from portals being allowed to be at perpendicular angles to each other anyway. So, yeah, I mean, we're not losing anything we hadn't already lost. And yeah, then there's conservation of energy that does seem to be conserved in the absolute system, but Noether's theorem tells us, well, we shouldn't expect it to be conserved with moving portals anyway. So maybe you can argue that's a kind of an argument for the absolute system, that you still get it even if you don't need it, but yeah, I don't know. So overall, I'm seeing, yeah, for me, it looks like all indications of thinking this through are that the relative system makes the most sense, and trying to do things in an absolute system causes a lot of problems. So yeah, obviously this is just game physics, and as I already mentioned, real-world physics don't allow moving or wormholes with ends moving relative to each other anyway, so it's just a thought experiment, but I hope you all found this interesting. So thank you everyone for watching through this. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you again soon. Bye. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and click the bell to be sure you get notifications of new uploads. See you again soon.